Hey guys, it's Jaylon. Welcome back. I'm here today to share with you my update for Pan in Every palette. This is a project where I pull in palettes to work on to hit pan in one of the shadows. I typically have 5 palettes that were randomly chosen, but I choose the shade. And then 3 where the palettes were randomly chosen, and the shadows were randomly chosen. Now, this project was, for me, inspired by Paula at A Beauty Guru Made Me Do It, and the original creator was Lady Pans-A-Lot. So, let me share with you the palettes I was working on. So, I have a nice pile here. I do have more than the number I specified earlier, and I have more than 8 palettes going in this project right now. I will put my last update. I don't know if I can do it in the cards on my iPad, but I'll definitely link it down below. The palettes I was working on were, I chose the shade. The first one is the Bare Minerals Nudes palette. The Sydney Grace and Temptalia Quintessence palette. Quintessence Light. The Kat Von D Lolita palette. The Smashbox Golden Hour palette. It's one of the cover shot palettes. The Festival palette by Juvias Place. The Tartlet Flirt palette. And the last one was the Nabla QT palette in Wild Berry. And the palettes where the shades were randomly chosen for me. I have the Hip Dot Zion palette. The MAC Feast Your Eyes palette. I had to look at the back to know the name. Couldn't remember. And the last one is this beautiful Natasha Denona 28 Blue Purple palette. So let me share with you the 2 palettes that I can roll out, which is very exciting. The first one is from the category that where I chose the shade, and that is from this Smashbox palette, the Cover Shot Golden Hour. And I hit pan in this kind of like rosy gold shade right here. See. There we go. So I'm so happy to have pan in this. It didn't take me as long as I thought it would. I did have a dip in this shade when I pulled out this palette, but I think this could be an easy palette to pan, kind of, maybe. I don't know. This was not kind of a lackluster shade, to be honest. But I made it work. I used it as a base for some other shadows. So I made it work. Anyway, that's rolling out. And the second palette that is rolling out is the Hip Dot Zion palette. This one here. And I was working on the shade Sublime, which is this shade right here. You can see my pan. Of course, the rest of this palette is untouched. But at least I hit pan in it. Okay, so those are the 2 palettes I can roll out, and let me share with you the other palettes I'm working on and how I'm doing on the shades. The first I have is by Bare Minerals, the Nudes palette. The shade that I rolled in is the shade East. And I have been using this quite a bit. I don't know if you can see that nice dip going. I honestly don't know how deep these pans are, so I still think I have a ways to go. These each have 0.04 ounces, which is quite a bit. So I think it's still going to take me some time to hit pan in that one. But I do use it quite often. Next, from Sydney Grace and Temptalia, I have the Quintessence Light palette. And I was working on the shade Milky Way. And I've definitely used it a couple of times, but I am nowhere close. I forgot to swatch any of the shadows. What's wrong with me? So there is the Bare Minerals shade. And here is Milky Way. Oh my gosh. So pretty. Next, from Kat Von D Lolita palette, I'm working on the shade Lolita. And again, not much use on this one. You can see that I've definitely used it, but there's not even a dip in this. I find Kat Von D shadows to be very hard pressed. It's a really pretty color. I don't love the formula. I love this palette, but as I've been using the Quad and Rust, I don't know. I love this palette, but I'm starting to like not love Kat Von D shadows. It's weird. Next, from Juvia's Place, I have the Festival palette, and I rolled in the shade ABBA, which is right here, and I do have a dip going there. I am wearing this today, like tapped on top of another shadow that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And this shade is stunning. I love it so much. I'm so glad I rolled it in. There we go. I feel like it goes on just beautifully. Love it. So glad I'm working on it. And from the Tartelette Flirt palette, I rolled in the shade Playful, which is this one right here. Now you can see that Tarte imprint is worn away. So I've definitely used this. I just haven't used it very much. And again, Tarte shadows are tightly pressed. So there we go. Where's the shade? I'm probably going to work on this more so in the fall because it's a great fall shade. And I may work on these two together. This one I'm working on right now. So I'm hoping I'll have pan by the next update. And the last palette in this category is the Nabla Cutie palette in Wild Berry. And I rolled in the shade Venom. So this one here, you can see my little dip. I freaking love this shade. It's beautiful. Beautifully pigmented. Blends out wonderfully. I love it. Oh, it's so pretty. Now, if you watched my last update, you'll know that I went a little crazy bringing in a bunch of new eyeshadow palettes because I wasn't happy with what I was getting. I was like, this is all boring. I'm not going to do that today. So all of those were, again, the shades that I picked. And that is, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 palettes. So I'm still working on 2 palettes in the section where the shades were chosen randomly for me. I'm going to spit that out. The first one is by MAC. This is the Feast Your Eyes palette. And I got this shade here, which is this brown. I want to say this is the shade Golden Rage. And I have used it, but barely tell. This is like a cream to powder formula. It's a little bit interesting, challenging to use. I'm not really sure. So there we go. There's the shade. Not really a shade that I normally would like gravitate towards, especially in this palette. I've used it. I've used it to deepen the outer corner. But I don't know. I kind of like the shimmer formula in here better than the matte formula so far. The next and last palette that I have to share with you today, I rolled in this Natasha Denona 28 Blue Purple palette. And of all the shades, the shade that was randomly chosen for me was this one. And it is Quicksilver. Now, I have used it, of course, as you can see. I'm making myself use it. I actually have it as a base today for some of the eyeshadows I'm wearing. And this was the palette where in one of my comments, somebody mentioned, oh, you could have picked a shade out of that palette because you only had one palette rolling out or a couple of palettes rolling out where the shade was chosen for you. That's true, but I like to have 5 and 3, and I only had one palette remaining in the section where the palette was chosen for me. So that's why this is going to stay in the shade that's chosen for me section. So anyway, Quicksilver. And I may have said palette instead of shadow. My apologies. This is, it's a nice formula. Don't get me wrong. It's just not a shade that I gravitate towards. What I do like about it is it's kind of like a blue leaning gray and silver, and I like it as a base. It almost, on my arm, it looks different than the way it looks on my eyes, and it's probably because of the tan that I have. That's what I'm thinking. But I am using it, and I think that's the important thing, is at least it's getting some use. Out of all the shades in here, this one. So anyway, I'm working on it. It's probably going to take me forever to hit pan, but we're getting some use. So I currently have like 6 palettes I'm working on where I chose the shade, and then 2 where the shade was chosen for me. So we're going to bring in 1 more into that latter category. And I have all of my palettes in Wheel of Names. So I'm going to go into full screen mode, and we are going to see what the next palette is. And then we'll have the shade randomly chosen. Wow. Okay. Odins Eye Alva Eyeshadow Palette. This is somewhat newer palette to my collection. That's exciting. So let me go grab it. I'll be right back. Okay, so here is the palette. I haven't even looked at it yet. It's actually still in its sleeve. So let me take this sleeve off. And it's the same. And here is what the palette looks like. Ooh, pretty. Gorgeous. And why don't we just take this little plastic thing off? So we have, what, 16 eyeshadows here to randomly choose from. So let me pull out my phone, and we're going to pull up Pretty Random and go to 16. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we get. Number 10. Okay. What is that? So this is the top of the palette here. So 4, 8, 9, 10, right? No, 10 is this one. Right, 1, 4, 8. That's that one. Oh, Lordy. Okay, let me see what this looks like. These are much smaller pans. This looks really similar to the one. Oh, no, it's not. I was going to say it looks similar to the one I'm panning from MAC, but it's much more rosy than that. Ooh, this is a beautiful shadow. Ooh, I like that. I feel like this is a very fall color story, and we're going into fall, which is perfect. Because like I said, I like to use this as a base for even this shadow. In fact, let me show you what that looks like, because I think it's actually really pretty. I tested like some shadows here and there. Well, before I do that, I'm very excited about this palette. Very, very excited. And I think that matte's going to be beautiful. Okay, so here is that shadow. This shade Abba over this one, and you can see it adds some depth and dimension to that shade. I also wanted to show you this combo. So this is again that shade from Natasha Denona, and I topped it with this Shine by SD shadow in Falling. It's like an iridescent multi-chrome. I played around with some combinations and found this, and I was like, that is stunning. So I've definitely used that shade in this combo a couple of times as well. So pretty. But regardless, this is my color story, which is great going into the fall season. I'm very excited. Oh my gosh, that Odins Eye shade is gorgeous. So anyway, that is going to be it for this update. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you are doing well and staying safe. Please hit that subscribe button, and I will see y'all next time. Bye. The Juvias Place. Next from, no, hold on. Look at how pretty this palette is. All the shades I'm panning. So pretty. I love them. All my pretty little shadows. Okay, bye.